Good evening and welcome to Poland Daily News. I'm Nicholas Richardson. Poland's Minister of Science and Higher Education, Dariusz Wieczorek, admitted with disarming candour that dormitories for one zloty, one of the flagship election promises of the ruling coalition, was, and I quote, a sham. The minister also said that there was nothing to apologise for. The list of unfulfilled promises seems endless, and it's exactly 1 month from the first anniversary of the establishment of Donald Tusk's government. Honesty is a virtue rarely used in politics, which is a shame. The Minister of Science and Higher Education, Dariusz Wieczorek, of the left, decided on a moment of truth.
Przepraszam za akademiki za złotówkę, tak czy nie?
Nie.
A to była ściema.
Now the minister admits that it was a sham. And a year ago, during the election campaign, there were so many promises, so many beautiful words. The programme was supposed to help the neediest young Poles who so eagerly rushed to the ballot boxes. Dormitories should be for one zloty, and this is not a social programme. This is an equal opportunity programme. This is a programme that we are simply committed to.
A to była ściema.
The voters are no longer laughing. Many people, especially young people who have less experience and are not yet used to politicians just so brazenly passing the buck, expected the demands to be implemented, and these people will turn away from the left. The left is now largely a laughingstock to its voters. This is not the best period for Dariusz Wieczorek. The Niezależna.pl portal published 3 weeks ago shocking footage starring the science minister. The politician, in a truly gangster style, tried to force the resignation of the rector of the public vocational university in Grudziądz, Professor Bogusław Kopka. This is playing with fire. If something happens tomorrow such that in general you do not submit this resignation, then we will have to approach this school differently. Well, yes, if you care that this school is... This university will not be there. That needs to be made clear. This university simply will not be there. The ministry, of course, responds that these words are taken out of context. However, to their misfortune, further information was published by Wirtualna Polska, where the minister used practically the same methods against the president of the Łukasiewicz Research Network, Andrzej Dybczynski. I will destroy your image in the media so that you won't find a job anywhere anymore. According to Andrzej Dybczynski, former president of the Łukasiewicz Research Network, this is what Science Minister Dariusz Wieczorek said. This is how a politician urged him to relinquish his severance package. The minister himself thinks he has nothing to reproach himself for and is not thinking about resigning. One more publication about me and I resign? Yes or no? No. Also, colleagues in the government are rather silent on the subject of the minister. And how is the fulfilment of the other election promises going? Rather poorly. The celebrated 100 specific promises for the first 100 days of government today sound like an unfunny joke. According to calculations by the Civic Coalition itself, which cannot be accused of objectivity, only 23 promises have been realised, and 336 days have passed. This comes first from the arrogance of power and second from the certainty of getting another mandate. As you can see, years pass away and the strategy of Donald Tusk's camp does not change. Radosław Sikorski and Jacek Rostowski chatted about this faction's approach to election promises a decade ago. To promise twice is like to keep once. Political promises bind only those who believe in them. A year ago, a sufficient number of voters believed during the parliamentary elections, and Donald Tusk's coalition took power. Time will tell how strong that faith was and whether it will weaken with more unfulfilled promises. Donald Trump flew to Washington for the first time since winning the election. The president-elect first met Republican politicians in the House of Representatives. According to forecasts, Republicans will almost certainly manage to maintain their majority in the lower house of Congress and gain power in the Senate as well. Then President Joe Biden received Donald Trump at a courtesy meeting at the White House to congratulate him on his election victory.
This is Donald Trump's first official visit since winning the presidential election. In the morning, at the invitation of Joe Biden, he departed from his Mar-a-Lago estate in Florida for Washington, D.C.
Mr. President-elect and former President,
thank you.
Donald, congratulations.
Thank you.
And looking forward to having like we said, smooth transition. Do everything we can to make sure you're accommodated, what you need. And we're going to get a chance to talk about some of that today. So
good.
Welcome
Thank you
back.
very much. And thank you very much. And politics is tough. And it's, in many cases, not a very nice world, but it is a nice world today, and I appreciate it very much. A transition that's so smooth, it'll be as smooth as it can get, and I very much appreciate that, Joe.
You're welcome.
The meeting was held in the White House, and specifically in the Oval Office.
Honestly, when it comes to why President Biden is doing this, because he believes in the norms, he believes in our institution, he believes in a peaceful transfer of power. It is important, not just because it's important to him, but it's important to the American people. He said the American people deserve this. They deserve a peaceful transfer of power.
It's nice to win. It's always nice to win. A lot of good friends in this room. So you know we had like historic kind of numbers, especially for the president, but we won't get into that.
President Joe Biden congratulated the Republican on his victory. The two leaders discussed the details of Donald Trump's assumption of power. Part of the meeting was also private, which was emphasized by the White House. Melania Trump refused to meet one-on-one with First Lady Jill Biden due to the fact that Joe Biden authorized an FBI action at Trump's Mar-a-Lago mansion, during which agents searched her private belongings. Even before his meeting at the White House, Donald Trump spoke to Republican politicians in Washington.
I just want to thank everybody. You've been incredible. We worked with a lot of you to get you in, and you helped me, and you helped me too.
We're moving on, and we're turning the page. And this is something that the American people desperately need and deserve. We are going to raise an America First banner above this place.
Last night, Donald Trump made a number of key decisions on positions in the new U.S. administration. A veteran of the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, Fox News television presenter Pete Hegseth became Secretary of Defense. Mark Rubio should soon be nominated as Secretary of State.
It's a challenge under any administration when there are views that differ between the Secretary of State, the Secretary of Defense, the National Security Advisor, for example, that name three key posts. And those views are hashed out along with others in the intelligence community in the Situation Room. And that's where policy is really developed and put to a fine point for presidential decision.
Donald Trump is also strengthening the intelligence services. His close associate, John Ratcliffe, will become head of the CIA, and the Department of Homeland Security will be headed by Kristi Noem, governor of the state of South Dakota.
Freedom will make America wealthy again. And with President Trump in the White House, with Senator J.D. Vance by his side, we will prove it across America.
But this nomination was eagerly awaited by Americans. In accordance with Donald Trump's election promise, the Department of Government Efficiency will fall to Elon Musk. The billionaire and inventor will take care of spending cuts and rational management of Americans' taxes, among other things.
Your money is being wasted, and the Department of Government Efficiency is going to fix that.
Musk will be supported by another billionaire, Vivek Ramaswamy.
We're going to be reducing taxes. We can do things that nobody else can do. Nobody else is going to be able to do it. China doesn't have what we have. Nobody has what we have. But we have the greatest people also. Maybe that's the most important thing.
President-elect Donald Trump's new administration has one most important task: to make America great again.
Russia is preparing a broad offensive to target one of Ukraine's largest and most important cities, Zaporizhzhia, according to Ukrainian intelligence reports, hence the regularly repeated attacks on the city. Kyiv is also under daily attack from the air. The Russians sent drones and missiles toward the Ukrainian capital in the morning, targeting civilians.
This is Russia's first such attack on Kyiv in more than 2 months. Drones, cruise missiles, and ballistic missiles have rained down on the Ukrainian capital. Residents took refuge in subway tunnels for hours. I often think about those who started this war. What drove them? What do they actually want? What do they lack in life? And what keeps them from normalcy? Putin's army is stepping up attacks on Ukraine in many regions. For the past few days, attacks on civilian facilities in Zaporizhzhia have been increasing, with a growing number of dead and wounded. My son and my wife are in the hospital. I don't even know what happened yet, because I can't contact them. The intelligence cited by the media from both Ukraine and Western allies indicates that Russia will try harder and harder to attack in this particular region of Ukraine and attempt to quickly take Zaporizhzhia. The Kremlin is preparing for a broad offensive in the Zaporizhzhia region. It's another sign that the war across the eastern border is entering the heat of the moment before U.S. President Donald Trump takes office, announcing that he will bring the conflict to a swift end. And the victims of Russia's criminal actions are primarily civilians. The situation is also becoming more difficult due to the approaching winter and low temperatures.
It is a grim reminder that the war continues and continues with a vengeance, with civilians caught in the middle. Our trip last week coincided with the first snowfall. It was already getting quite cold, and this has been something that, of course, we're quite concerned about, with 65% of the energy infrastructure impacted and huge concerns that there will be another catastrophic hit on energy as Ukraine faces the coldest months.
Meanwhile, in Brussels, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken met with NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte. The conversation was about accelerating aid to Ukraine.
As we're working to make sure that Ukraine has what it needs to effectively defend itself, the United States continues to step up. We've obligated just recently and pushed out the door another $8 billion in security assistance for Ukraine. That was in September. Another almost $500 million just a few weeks ago. And President Biden is committed to making sure that every dollar we have at our disposal will be pushed out the door between now and January 20th.
Ukraine is successfully attacking the occupied Crimea, among other places. Ukraine's security service carried out a successful assassination on the chief of staff of the 41st Missile Ship and Boat Brigade of the Russian Black Sea Fleet. He was killed in a car explosion in Russian-occupied Sevastopol. He is another Russian military officer who lost his life over the past week.
After double-digit growth in transshipment volumes last year, the country's largest facilities, Gdansk, Gdynia and Szczecin-Świnoujście, saw declines in the first 3 quarters of this year. Experts point out that the easy potential for growth has already run out, and Poland needs to invest in infrastructure development, primarily rail, if our ports are to be attractive hubs. What's going on? The good fortune in the Polish economy has been broken. There are fewer new companies and existing ones are moving out of the country. Polish ports, after recording an increase in transshipments a year ago, are recording significant declines this year. Why is this trend reversing? Today, I took a closer look at the situation. This fatal policy that Donald Tusk is implementing, that is the mortification of the Oder River, the mortification of the lower Vistula River as far as investments are concerned, the halting of the construction of the container terminal in Świnoujście, and the brakes on the construction of the central transportation port, all these actions are causing cargo and investors to drift away, which can be seen today from Polish ports, and these significant drops in transshipments. Last year was a very successful year for Polish ports. Gdansk, Gdynia, Szczecin and Świnoujście handled a total of 145.7 million tons of cargo, an increase of 10% compared to 2022. This was not a coincidence. It was a very specific policy, primarily aimed at building large hubs. But the ports have already seen declines in the first 3 quarters of this year. Experts are sounding the alarm. If our ports are to continue to be attractive hubs, Poland must invest in infrastructure development, primarily rail, and rail is one of the main elements of the central transport port. The fact that the so-called volume of transshipments has now fallen in Polish ports illustrates the situation in the entire Polish economy. Polish companies are going bankrupt and foreign companies operating in Poland are closing factories and moving their businesses outside our country. Polish retail chains are being taken over by Germans. Now they are set to buy out one of Poland's drugstore chains. All indications are that Poland is doomed to investment shortfalls and lack of development. This is confirmed by data from the Central Statistical Office. In the 3rd quarter of this year, 104 bankruptcies were recorded, 19.5% more than in the same period last year. Small entrepreneurs, people who have plans to set up, for example, a business and want to develop it, have suffered above all. Companies point to high prices, mainly for energy, as the main reason for the bad situation in the Polish economy. Energy prices in Poland are 2.5 times higher than in Norway and 1/4 higher than in Germany, Switzerland and Denmark. They are the highest in Europe and probably the highest in the world. There is no proposal from the other side of the more market liberal one that would ensure economic growth. This is what must worry investors. We have repeatedly said that an indicator of confidence in the state is how entrepreneurs will invest their money, and we have further signs that entrepreneurs are reducing their investments in Poland. The consequences of the lack of government strategy for development could be devastating for the Polish economy and for Poles. That's the news. Thank you for watching, and from me, it's have a good night and a better tomorrow.